When we decided to spend the summer at the family's country house, I thought it was a brilliant idea. 20 years of marriage, 2 grown kids who barely called, and a chance to step away from the grind. It sounded perfect. My wife Anna was all for it too. "We could fix the old place up a bit," she said, her eyes gleaming with the possibility of a fresh start. It was a place we used to visit when we were younger, before life got so complicated. Maxim, my 23-year-old nephew, tagged along to help with the repairs. He was good with his hands, always willing to lend a hand. "Uncle Ola," he'd said, "it'll be great to spend time with you guys. I could use the fresh air too." First, it was idyllic. Anna and Maxim painted walls and spruced up the garden while I worked remotely from the study. I admit my focus wasn't on them. I was consumed by work deadlines, meetings, and emails. But Anna seemed fine with it, or so I thought. I started noticing little things. Maxim would compliment Anna on how beautiful the garden looked under her care. He'd laugh at her jokes in a way I hadn't for years. And Anna, she glowed under the attention. I chalked it up to her being happy, finally getting a break from city life. But there was one moment, a split second, that stuck with me. I walked into the kitchen to grab a coffee and saw them painting a wall together. Anna had a streak of white paint on her cheek, and Maxim leaned in, brushing it away with his thumb. The intimacy in that moment hit me like a punch in the gut, but I dismissed it as harmless. After all, Maxim was family. That night, as I lay in bed next to Anna, I couldn't shake the image. "Is something wrong?" she asked, turning toward me. Her voice was soft, genuine. "No, just tired." I lied. And so began the summer that would change everything. It's funny how things that seem innocent at first can snowball into something much darker. The days stretched long, the golden sun reflecting off the freshly painted walls. But beneath the surface, I began to notice shifts. Anna's laughter, once a rare melody, rang out more often, but not with me. It was Maxim who brought it out of her. They'd spend hours chatting about old travels, shared dreams, and things I hadn't heard her talk about in years. One afternoon, I found Anna and Maxim in the studio at the far end of the house. It used to be a dusty, forgotten room, but they'd cleaned it up, turned it into some sort of creative retreat. I leaned against the doorframe, watching as they laughed about some inside joke. Maxim was showing her sketches he'd made, and she looked so captivated, her fingers brushing against his as she handed one back. "Nice work in here," I said, stepping inside. They both startled, their heads snapping up like guilty kids caught sneaking cookies. Maxim recovered first. "Thanks, Uncle Ola. It's mostly Anna's vision, though. She's got a great eye for this stuff." Anna's cheeks flushed, and she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh, it's nothing. Maxim's the real artist." The moment felt off, but I pushed the thought aside. Maybe I was overthinking things. Later that night, while Anna cooked dinner, I casually asked, "You and Maxim seem to be spending a lot of time together. What are you two working on?" She didn't even flinch. "Just the studio. He's really talented, you know? It's refreshing to talk to someone so passionate about life." Refreshing. The word stuck in my throat. "Well, you're always busy with work," she said, her tone light, but there was an edge to it that I couldn't ignore. "Maxim actually listens." I didn't respond. What could I say? She wasn't wrong. That night, I stayed up later than usual, pretending to work but really just replaying her words over and over. Around midnight, I decided to grab some water. As I walked toward the kitchen, I caught a flicker of movement outside the window. Anna. She was crossing the yard, her figure barely visible in the dim moonlight. My heart raced as I watched her head toward the studio. I stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Was she meeting Maxim? Was there something innocent the first wasn't seeing? Or was this exactly what my gut was screaming it was? I didn't follow her. Couldn't. Instead, I sat there in the dark, the weight of suspicion pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. The days that followed felt like I was living in someone else's life. I was the outsider, peeking in through the glass, trying to decipher what was happening in my own home. Every interaction between Anna and Maxim now seemed charged, layered with something I couldn't quite name but couldn't ignore either. I decided to start paying closer attention. It didn't take long to notice the patterns. Every night, after I turned off my laptop and headed to bed, Anna would say she wanted some fresh air or had a sudden idea for the studio. She'd slip out quietly, but I always knew where she was going. The breaking point came one evening when I stayed up late, deliberately pretending to work. Around 11 p.m., the familiar creak of the back door reached my ears. I moved quietly to the window and watched as Anna made her way across the yard toward the studio. My heart was pounding, a sickening rhythm of anger and dread. This time I couldn't just let it go. I waited a few minutes before following her, staying in the shadows. As I approached the studio, muffled voices reached me. Anna's laugh was soft, intimate, followed by Maxim's deeper chuckle. My fists clenched at my sides. Through the open window I saw them. They were sitting close on an old couch, illuminated by the soft glow of a single lamp. Anna's hand rested on Maxim's arm as they talked, their heads almost touching. He was showing her something on his phone, and they both laughed again. I wanted to burst in, to demand answers, but something held me back. I felt frozen, like watching a car crash in slow motion. My mind screamed at me to stop this, to confront them, but my body refused to move. And then it happened. Maxim turned toward Anna, his hand brushing her cheek. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, her lips meeting his in a kiss that shattered whatever hope I had left. I stumbled back, the world spinning around me. My chest felt like it was going to cave in, the air thick and suffocating. I didn't know how long I stood there, but eventually, I forced myself to leave. Back in the house, I sat in the darkened kitchen, staring at nothing. My mind replayed the scene over and over until the anger boiled up, hot and unforgiving. How could she do this? To me? To us? When I finally heard her footsteps approaching, I slipped out of sight. She came in quietly, closing the door behind her as if nothing had happened. I didn't confront her that night. Instead, I lay in bed, pretending to sleep, while my mind raced with plans of what I would do next. The next morning felt surreal, like the world had shifted slightly on its axis. Anna moved around the kitchen, humming softly as if nothing had happened. Maxim was out by the shed, tinkering with tools, a carefree smile plastered on his face. I couldn't take it anymore. "Anna," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. She turned to me, startled. "We need to talk." She hesitated, her hands stilling over the coffee mug she was rinsing. "About what?" "About last night." Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, a flicker of something. Fear? Guilt? Crossing her face before she quickly masked it. "What about last night?" I stared at her, the silence between us stretching, heavy and oppressive. I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand answers, but all I could manage was a quiet, "I saw you." Her breath hitched. For a moment, I thought she might deny it, but then her shoulders slumped. She turned off the faucet and gripped the edge of the sink, her back to me. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice trembling. "Didn't mean for what to happen, Anna?" I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "The kiss? The late-night meetings? The lies?" She turned to face me, tears brimming in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. I was lonely, Ola. You're always working, always distracted." And Maxim, he listened. He noticed me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "So that's it? Because I was busy, you decided to what? Betray me? Betray us?" "It's not like that," she pleaded, stepping closer. "I never stopped loving you. I just needed to feel alive again." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I wanted to yell, to throw something, but instead, I just laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "And Maxim? Did he make you feel alive? Did he remind you of what it's like to be 20 again?" "Don't do this," she whispered, tears streaming down her face now. "Please, don't do what, Anna? Hold you accountable for destroying 20 years of marriage? For making me feel like a fool in my own home?" At that moment, the back door creaked open, and Maxim walked in, wiping his hands on a rag. His smile vanished the instant he saw us. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice cautious. "What's going on?" I repeated, stepping toward him. "What's going on is that I know. I know about you and Anna." He froze, his face pale. "Unchle ole, e." "Save it," I snapped, cutting him off. "I saw you, last night, through the window." His mouth opened, then closed, as if struggling to find the right words. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen." I looked between the two of them, my stomach churning with disgust. That seems to be the theme here. Neither of you meant for this to happen. And yet, here we are. Anna reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said coldly. "Don't you dare." The weight of their betrayal was unbearable. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind me. I drove back to the city without a clear plan, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The silence in the car was deafening, save for the occasional sound of my ragged breathing. The anger boiled beneath my skin, but it was the sadness, the hollow ache in my chest, that threatened to crush me. By the time I reached our apartment, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the familiar walls. I walked inside, the space eerily still, like a monument to the life Anna and I had built together. I dropped my bag by the door and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Hours passed before I moved. I reached for a pen and paper from the coffee table and started writing. "Thank you for the truth. Now I know how much you appreciate us." The words felt like they burned the paper as I wrote them, every letter carrying the weight of my heartbreak. I folded the note, placed it on the counter, and began packing. It didn't take long, just the essentials. A duffel bag, a few clothes, and my laptop. I didn't even bother looking at the family photos on the walls or the little mementos we'd collected over the years. They felt like relics of a life that no longer existed. The drive to a cheap motel on the outskirts of town was a blur. By the time I checked in, I felt numb, like the reality of everything hadn't fully sunken yet. I tossed my bag onto the bed and sank into a chair by the window, staring out at the neon sign flickering in the parking lot. I thought about calling someone, a friend, my brother, but what would I even say? That my wife had chosen my own nephew over me? That 20 years of marriage had unraveled in a single summer? Sleep didn't come easily that night. I replayed every moment of the past few weeks, every sign I'd ignored, every laugh they'd shared. The anger simmered beneath the surface, but it was the grief that hit me hardest. How had we ended up here? The next morning, I turned my phone on and found several missed calls and texts from Anna. "Ola, please come back. We need to talk. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, I love you. Let's fix this." The messages blurred as tears filled my eyes. Love? She said she loved me. But how could someone who loved me tear me apart like this? I didn't respond. Instead, I called my boss and asked for some personal leave. He didn't ask for details, just gave me the time I needed. I spent the next few days in that dingy motel, trying to piece together what was left of my life. The days in the motel stretched on like a bad dream, each hour blending into the next. I had no appetite, no energy, and no answers. The note I'd left behind felt like my final word, but Anna's messages kept coming. "Anna, we owe it to each other to talk. Please don't shut me out. Anna, I'm going to the city tomorrow. I'll wait for you at the apartment." That last one made my stomach turn. The idea of facing her, of hearing whatever excuse or justification she had, felt like reopening a fresh wound. But some part of me knew I couldn't avoid her forever. The next day, I returned to the apartment, unsure of what I would say. The place felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else. Anna was sitting on the couch, her face pale and tear-streaked. She stood as soon as I walked in. "Ola," she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Don't," I said. "I'm here to listen, not to forgive." Her face crumpled, but she nodded. "I don't know where to start," she said, wringing her hands. "Start with why," I said, my voice cold. Why did you do it? She took a deep breath, her eyes filled with guilt. I don't have an excuse, only reasons. I was lonely, Ola. You've been so distant, so absorbed in work. Maxim, he noticed me. He made me feel like I mattered again. You mattered to me, Anna, I said, my voice rising. I worked to provide for us, to give us a life. I thought we were a team. She looked away, her hands trembling. I know. And I threw it all away. I was selfish. I got caught up in something. Something I didn't know how to stop. Didn't know how to stop? I echoed bitterly. You had every opportunity to stop, Anna. Every time you left the house in the middle of the night. Every time you lied to my face. You made a choice. I know, she whispered. And I hate myself for it. But I didn't mean to hurt you. I laughed. A harsh, humorless sound. You didn't mean to hurt me? What did you think would happen when I found out? Did you think I'd just pat you on the back and say, it's okay? Anna, thanks for being honest? Tears streamed down her face. I don't expect you to forgive me, Ola. I don't even deserve it. But I need you to know that I regret everything. Losing you, losing us. It's the worst thing I've ever done. Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that there was still something worth salvaging. But the image of her and Maxim together, laughing, kissing, was seared into my mind. Where's Maxim? I asked, my voice low. He left, she said. After you walked out, I told him it was over. He packed his things and went back to the city. I nodded, the ache in my chest deepening. Good. At least you got one thing right. She flinched at the bitterness in my tone but didn't argue. I don't know if we can fix this, Anna, I said after a long silence. I don't know if I even want to try. Her face crumpled, and she sank onto the couch, her sobs filling the empty space between us. I stood there, unmoving, my heart torn between anger and the remnants of love I still felt for the woman I thought I knew. I left the apartment after that conversation, the weight of her tears and words dragging me down like an anchor. My mind was a storm of questions about her, about Maxim, about the life I thought we'd built together. A week passed. I stayed at the motel, keeping to myself and ignoring most of Anna's attempts to contact me. Then, one evening, as I sat staring blankly at the muted TV, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Unknown, Ola, it's Maxim. Please, I need to talk to you. It's important. Seeing his name on my screen sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, to delete the message and pretend he didn't exist. But curiosity, mixed with a darker need for closure, got the better of me. I texted back. There's nothing we need to talk about. Maxim, it's about Anna. And you. Please just hear me out. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a cafe near the edge of town. I told myself it was to put this all to rest, to make sure he knew exactly what I thought of him. But deep down, I wanted answers. Answers that Anna hadn't given me. When I arrived, Maxim was already there, sitting at a table by the window. He looked nervous, fidgeting with the rim of his coffee cup. As I approached, he stood, his face pale and apologetic. Uncle Ola, he began, but I cut him off. Don't call me that, I snapped, sitting down across from him. You lost the right to call me family the moment you touched her. He winced, but he didn't argue. I know, and I'm sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I regret what happened. All of it. Regret doesn't change what you did, I said coldly. Why are you here, Maxim? What could you possibly say to make this better? He hesitated, his hands trembling slightly as he clasped them together. I didn't come to excuse myself. I came to tell you the truth. The full truth. I narrowed my eyes. And what truth is that? He took a deep breath. Anna wasn't happy. She told me how distant things had become between you two. How she felt invisible, unloved. I clenched my fists under the table, my jaw tightening. And you thought it was your job to fix that? By sleeping with her? No, he said quickly. I didn't plan for it to happen. I swear. But Anna, she confided in me. and I let my feelings get in the way. Your feelings. The words tasted bitter on my tongue. I've always admired her, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Ever since I was a teenager. But I never acted on it. I never thought I'd have a chance. When she started opening up to me, I lost control. His words made my stomach churn. So this was just a fantasy for you? A chance to live out some childish crush? No, he insisted, his eyes pleading. It wasn't like that. I cared about her. I still do. But after you left, I realized what I did was wrong. I couldn't stay. I couldn't face her or you. That's why I'm leaving. I'm going back to France. His confession left me reeling. I didn't know whether to believe him, to pity him, or to punch him across the table. You destroyed my marriage, I said, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. You destroyed my life. I know, he said, his head bowed, and I'll carry that guilt forever. But you deserve the truth. Anna didn't just betray you because she was lonely. She betrayed you because she felt like she'd already lost you. The words hit harder than I expected, cutting through my anger and leaving behind a hollow ache. Was that true? Had I pushed her away without realizing it? As I sat there, staring at the man who had taken everything from me, I realized something terrifying. The blame didn't rest solely on Anna or Maxim. I had played a part in this too. I left the cafe feeling like I'd been gutted. Maxim's words echoed in my mind, twisting and turning, forcing me to confront things I hadn't wanted to face. Was I really as distant as he and Anna claimed? Had I failed her in ways I didn't see? But no, this wasn't just about me. Anna had a choice. Maxim had a choice. And both of them had chosen betrayal. When I got back to the apartment, Anna was waiting for me. She stood as I walked in, her eyes puffy and red, her hands twisting nervously. Where were you? She asked softly. Talking to Maxim, I said bluntly, watching as her face crumpled. What did he say? The truth, I replied, dropping my keys on the counter. At least his version of it. You felt invisible, unloved. And instead of coming to me, you decided to confide in him, to turn to him. Her lips trembled as she tried to respond, but I cut her off. Do you even realize what you've done? I demanded, my voice rising. You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed our marriage. You turned our home into a lie. And Maxim? He's running halfway across the world to escape this mess. She stepped closer, tears streaming down her face. Ola, please. I know I hurt you. I know I betrayed you in the worst way. But I don't want to lose you. I love you. I always have. Love. I scoffed, shaking my head. You call this love? Sneaking around, lying to my face, and then playing the victim when it all comes crashing down. She flinched at my words, her sobs growing louder. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I want to make things right. Please, let me try. The pain in her voice was real, but so was my anger, my heartbreak. I wanted to believe her, to give her the chance to fix what she'd broken. But could I? Could we ever come back from this? I sat down heavily on the couch, burying my face in my hands. I don't know, Anna, I said quietly. I don't know if I can forgive you, or if I even want to. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Anna sank to her knees in front of me, her hands clutching mine. Please, Ola, I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll give you space. Just don't give up on us. I looked at her, this woman I had loved for 20 years, now a stranger in so many ways. The urge to lash out, to scream and blame her for everything, was overwhelming. But beneath it all was a flicker of something else, something I couldn't quite name. I need time, I said finally, pulling my hands away from hers. I need time to think, to figure out if there's anything left to save. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'll wait, however long it takes. I'll wait. As I left the apartment again, the weight of the decision ahead pressed down on me. Could I find it in myself to forgive her? Or was this the end of a life I thought was unbreakable? But as I stepped into the crisp evening air, one thing became painfully clear. No matter what choice I made, nothing would ever be the same again.